So, hi everybody. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you everybody who came to the potluck last week. We had a really great event. It was really fun. And as for next week, Monday, we don't have a meeting for December 4th, but Black School will be having a finals decompression session. We had one for midterms and it was really fun. We were able to have Play-Doh, pop sockets, and that was really fun. So it'll be next week, Wednesday. And yeah, no other major announcements, but as for now, I would like to introduce Sophia Topalis and Erin Fu, which one of them wants to go first, and just talk about grad school and how everything's been going so far.
Do you have a preference, Erin?
I do not. I don't care.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay.
I have some slides if that's okay, if I can share them, just so I can organize my thoughts. Hold on. But while I'm pulling that up, I'm Sophia. I did go to QC for my undergrad, and now I won't tell you where I'm at right now. I'll tell you that after. But I didn't do a gap year, so I pretty much went straight into graduate school right after that last semester. So I kind of wanted to put this visual because I always get people asking questions like, when did you do what? And when am I supposed to make sure that's done? So the last semester, I'm going to work a little backwards, but the last semester of my senior year, I knew where I was going by the end of it. So pretty much a year before that, you kind of want to kickstart that planning and making sure you're getting everything done. So starting a year before that, I made sure to get, I think it depends on each program. Each program had a different requirement, but pretty much for the most part, I had 3 for each of my applications. So I had some confirmation on who I was going to get a letter of rec from. And then I started the whole planning, making sure I had that checklist down so I could start checking things off. Eventually I took the GRE. I took it once. I know a lot of people stress over it. I don't think it's necessarily something you need to stress over, especially because a lot of GRE stuff has changed because of COVID. So I think when we applied that less schools had it. So I'm not sure how it is now. So for me, I kind of took that as if less schools are needing it. It's not a huge component, so don't stress too much about it. And then I went ahead and I checked in at the beginning of the fall semester of senior year, making sure that the letter of recs are good, finalizing everything, submitting interviews, and then ultimately deciding where I was going. I know that when I was taking the GRE, everyone was like freaking out over the scores, so I wanted to just be honest about my scores. I personally don't think I did that great in terms of like the spectrum of the grade and the range. I kind of scored pretty low. And ultimately I was going back and forth if I should take it or not, but based on what all the schools were telling me, I felt like it wasn't going to be a big component. And I felt like everything else in my application spoke for itself. So I decided to just stick with that. But those are my scores, and I had a 3.85 GPA. And then this is where I applied. I applied to 7 schools. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss anything. Every school pretty much had like pretty close deadlines. But I did a lot of, now that I look at where I applied, I think I would definitely take some applications back. But when you're applying, I know it can be really overwhelming and you're like, I need to apply everywhere. So I can definitely understand that, but I would just say, make sure that you can see yourself going where you're going. And I have like some tips for that later, but these are the schools that I applied to. And this is my planning sheet because I'm visual and I need to see everything. I'm more than happy to share this. I felt like for me, the planning, getting it started was the hardest part, but once I got it started, it was really easy to just like fill in these boxes and then make sure the checklist was getting done. So I'm happy to share a template if you guys are interested in this. But this is how I planned the information that I was needing for the applications. I did 3 interviews. Pace ended up getting back to me for an interview like way past decision day. So I don't know where that application would have gone if I would have gotten it or not. So it's just a question mark. But pretty much I want to say like a month or 2 after submitting everything, that's when I had interviews, and I had them pretty much with only the CUNYs, and Pace was like the only one that wasn't a CUNY that wanted an interview. And then ultimately I decided to go to teachers college. It was really, really hard to decide. But I weighed out the pros and cons. And for me, I just felt like this would have been a good place to challenge myself and just do this experience. Something else that I remember I was always asking was, what the heck is my schedule going to look like? So this is what my schedule looks like. I've honestly overloaded myself a lot. I don't have like any time to breathe, but it's a work in progress, and I'm learning, what's going to work for me. But pretty much I have class 2 days, and then in one day I have one class, which kind of sucks, but and then whenever I'm not in school, I'm pretty much at work. I'm very lucky to have a really flexible job, so I'm not sure. I know that it's not possible to always say like, oh, I can only work this amount, give me these hours, but this is what my schedule looks like right now. And yeah, it's a little overwhelming. One tip I would say is that, I was always being told like, you cannot work during grad school. And I don't agree with that. I think it's very much possible, especially for me going to teachers college with tuition being insanely high. That was not an option for me. I was like, I'm going to figure it out. So this is me working like as much as I can. But a really big tip I do want to give is that it can be really overwhelming. And as Professor Navarro was saying before, it can feel really stressful, but in all honesty, it's a really good thing to be stressed about. Like, you're going to become a clinician, you're going to do great. This is super exciting. So one thing I would say is, if you are working, like, don't fully book yourself, because you do want to have some time to work on your stuff. And you don't want that to be the reason why you're not focusing on your schoolwork. And yeah, these are some pictures of Teachers College. There's a dining hall, the cafe that I spend all my money getting coffee in. This is one of our classrooms and the building from the outside. Everyone has been super, super nice here. I made a pretty good group of friends like within orientation. So it's nice. You should feel, I don't want to say you're going to feel, you should feel a sense of home and where you are. This is where you're going to spend like 2.5 years, maybe 3 years doing academics that are really, really intense. And that sounds overwhelming, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. You're going to learn what works for you and how to approach it in a way that's best for you. But just make sure that, you feel good with where you are, and you don't want to doubt yourself on where you are. So some of my biggest tips is being organized. I would say like my biggest flex in undergrad was that I was really good at organizing myself, and all of a sudden I started my master's and I have no idea how to organize myself. So that might happen, and that's totally fine. You're going to figure it out. But just be patient with yourself. If you go against yourself when you're most stressed, it's really not going to be helpful. It's easier said than done, but just try to be grounded, especially now while you guys are doing the applications. Set the tone of like the path you want to be on. It can be stressful, but this is something good. It's something exciting. I would say go to info sessions. I remember when I was filling out my little Excel sheet, there was a lot of questions that I was like, I have no idea if this is a requirement, if I should be doing this. And info sessions are a great way to get all the information at once. And you can always email departments. They were pretty good with responding when I needed the help from them. This is a place you're going to be spending a lot of time in. And it's going to be at different points of the day. Like right now, I'm very lucky I don't have any night classes, but who knows, next semester when I start clinic, I don't know what my schedule is going to be like. I could easily be stuck here at night. And eventually that's something that, if you haven't been told, like I remember I was always told that you'll have night classes. So make sure you're just comfortable getting to school and going home. It's something you might overlook and be like, oh, it's really not that bad. But when you're tired and you have to do it every day, just make sure you're comfortable with it. And just, yeah, everyone's got this. I'm here to help. I want to make sure I give Erin some time to give her feedback, but everyone is going to make it. We're all going to do great. And everyone is going to be a speech therapist.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
I guess we'll save questions for both of you.
Oh, okay, perfect. Let me share. Okay, hold on. Let me see if this is going to work. Is this going to? Oh, there we go. Okay, mine is Sanrio themed. Okay, so for the people who like Hello Kitty and stuff, I kind of tried to make it cute. We're gonna play from the start. All right. Well, I should introduce myself. Hi everyone. I'm Erin. I worked alongside Sophia. She was our president for initial, and I was the vice president. So happy to be here, and I'm happy to see you all here. Which it's great to see undergrads getting ready to apply for graduate school. I know the process, it was a lot. But today I'll just be talking about the timeline of graduate school applications, the schools I applied to, my statistics, my extracurriculars, the decisions I received, which program I chose and why, and basically like how that transition is and my graduate school schedule. So, in terms of my graduate school process, so it's very similar to Sophia's, where I requested the recommendation letters early to mid-May. A lot of your professors are probably going to be very busy during the summer into like the next semester when they're preparing for classes. So it's very important that you ask them early, right? So that way they have a note of, okay, this student asked me for a recommendation letter. I have a note of it, so I'm going to make sure I hand that in. However, you want to remind your professors to send those recommendation letters out, because I did have a situation where a professor did not submit on time and there was a whole thing. So just make sure you keep sending those reminders, okay? That way they know, okay, this is the deadline, this is when I'm going to send it in. Similar to Sophia as well, I also had an Excel sheet with the schools that I was thinking of applying to. I wanted to stay in New York primarily, so that was mainly my focus in terms of which graduate schools I would apply to. And for the school list, I actually participated in this bilingual speech pathology mentorship program, which I highly recommend for students who want to go into bilingual speech pathology, because essentially I was paired with a mentor and we sat one-on-one to create an Excel sheet together. But you also can do this by yourself, just have your schools and like what the program offers. Specifically, I was looking for programs that were like culturally sensitive, had a lot of diversity and things like that. So those are things to keep in mind with your school list. And I made that around June. Essay writing, this is like the big hitter for your applications. You want to have a strong essay. If you are not a standardized test taking person like me, I'm not great at standardized testing as well. Your essays are really what helps you push your application above and beyond compared to the other students you're applying with in that cycle, right? So I did this around like July to October. And I recommend going over it with a college advisor or writing center staff, a mentor that you feel knows you well enough to help you with your personal statements, because essentially like your personal statement tells you who you are as a person, why you want to go into this field. And it really shows the graduate school like how you're going to fit into that specific program. So just make sure to like cater that. Also, you can reuse personal statements. I have reused those, but just make sure that you have like a paragraph specifically about why you want to go to that specific school and that specific program. Because if, let's say, Brooklyn College sees that you have a paragraph about Teachers College at Columbia, I think they're going to be a little bit confused on why you're applying there if you have like a paragraph just about teachers. So make sure that you're catering it. That way it's a lot easier for you in terms of your applications. And then the GRE, I took that in October and retook it in November. Honestly, it's a waste of money. Okay, don't retake it. Like, these schools are not going to take GRE into consideration as heavily as your essays, your GPA, your extracurriculars. Okay, so similar with what Sophia's been saying, I would not stress out over it. I stressed myself out and retook it for no reason whatsoever. It's a lot of money that you're spending. And if you want to really focus on components for the GRE, I recommend focusing on the English and the writing, because that's usually what grad schools really look at. But again, they don't take that heavily into consideration. So don't stress yourself out over that, because it's not worth it. And in terms of just like application submission, so deadlines would vary. So I think for more of like the private schools, it was like January 1st to January 15th. And then CUNY, I believe at the time was February 1st. I don't know if they've changed that. But yeah, I would just say make sure you have a note of when these deadlines are. Try to submit those applications a week in advance. Do not do it the day of, because I'm telling you that that application page probably will crash on you, given that so many students are on that same application page. Okay, so do not do it the day of. Think of a week in advance. Even a few days in advance is okay, but don't do it the day of, because you're just going to stress out. Okay. Okay. So these are the schools I applied to. So I applied to Queens College, Teachers College. I applied to Brooklyn, New York University for their bilingual, St. John's for their bilingual, and Lehman for their bilingual. I believe for St. John's, they have like a rolling basis deadline. So you kind of submit it whenever, but that's also good to know, right? So if you want to prioritize which schools you're applying to, prioritize the ones that you really want to go to, right? Make sure those applications are really strong. Not saying don't put effort into those other applications, but if you don't have as much time for a certain school, but you really want to go to this school and like, you know, you have that application due, make sure you prioritize the programs you really want to go to, okay? Because applications also cost a lot of money. I'm sure you guys have been on Sidcast already and know, oh my gosh, these prices are a lot. So things to keep in mind, right? How many schools? I applied to like 6, but it depends on how confident you are. I'm a person that needs to have extra schools and backups upon backups. So if you're that type of person, I would recommend, I think 5 or 6 is fine. If you want to apply to more, you're more than welcome to, but just if you're a person that is looking at cost, keep that in mind as well when you're applying. Okay. So these are my statistics. So I had a 3.99 GPA. I was a CSD major, and I also had minors in psychology and honors in the social sciences. In terms of my GRE score, it also was not high. My verbal was about a 149. My math was like a 147. My writing was a pretty good score. It's a 5. I think they rate it out of 6. So I really did not focus on the math. I am not a math person. You don't really need to stress over your math, because I guarantee it, and Sophia can add on to this, we don't really use math unless we're doing like session notes or something, and you're just like, it's not really necessary. You don't need to know statistics. You don't, none of that. Unless you're doing research, then that's different, okay? But I don't think you need to know crazy amount of detail for the math. Okay, so these are my extracurriculars. So I mentioned earlier, my senior year, I was the vice president of NISHLA at QC. I also was a research fellow at the intersection of linguistics, language, and culture. I don't think they're doing it this year, but if you guys are interested in like research and want to get more, how do I say this? If you want to get your feet wet into research, this is a great fellowship to apply to. You get like a stipend for it, and you really can create your own research study based on what you're passionate about. So check them out, because I don't think they're going on for this year, but next year they definitely will have spots open. So be sure to check that out. I was also a CUNY reading corps tutor my senior year. That was basically me just teaching kids phonemic awareness, sound building, blending, reading sentences. So that's a good place to apply to as well, because they're very flexible with your schedule. So just make sure to take them into consideration if you're trying to look for a job on campus. And then I was also the vice president of campus affairs. I was also part of like Macaulay, which is a separate program from QC, but I was also the vice president there as well during my junior and senior year. I was an Art Beyond site intern my junior year, so I worked with CUNY Cultural Corps, and this was basically working with artists with disabilities who wanted to put their work out there. My goal was to amplify their voices and make sure their work was put out there for the rest of the world to see. I was also a student life intern for student development in my other program. I worked with Professor Jalba at the bilingual biliteracy lab. from my sophomore year to senior year. So I recommend this, especially underclassmen, if you're trying to really gain connections with professors. Try dabbling in research with professors. A lot of professors are doing research right now, and I'm sure they would be happy to take on more students for research. So, to help you build those connections for those recommendation letters, highly recommend that. And then I was also a committee for students with disabilities tutor my sophomore year. So I kind of tried to tailor my extracurricular slash like jobs towards my like graduate school application, right? I added activities that I felt were related to our major or related to what I wanted to do in graduate school and beyond. So those are some things to just keep in note. So in terms of my school decisions, I got an interview for QC and was accepted. I also applied to Teachers College. I was accepted. Brooklyn, I was rejected. That was my first decision, by the way. So imagine getting your first decision and it was a rejection. Personally, it was hard for me because I was like, oh man, that was my first decision. I got rejected. I think I told Sophia about it too. And it was hard. It's honestly hard when you see yourself get rejected, but I think the best way to go about it is it's not you as a person, it's just their system and their way of weeding out who they want and who they don't want. So it doesn't mean that you're not good enough, okay? It just means that that's how their system's working, that they might be looking at certain scores, GPA, maybe the essays weren't the best fit, so it's not on you really. It's just what that program is looking for sometimes might not align with what you've put out there for them. I was accepted to NYU and St. John's, and then Lehman, I did an interview and was accepted there. So overall, like pretty decent amount of decisions. So I decided to go to Queens College. So why Queens? Well, for me, I'm very heavy on the financial aspect. So I had to weigh in on, okay, how much am I going to be spending for graduate school? Because if I think about it, it's only 2 years, and 2 years paying like a lot of money is not in my wheelhouse. So for Queens, it was like 12K a year, as opposed to like other private schools, that would have been like 60K a year for me. So I really had to weigh those options, and I am a person that stresses out over money a lot. That's just how I grew up. So for me, cost was a huge factor. Also for me, it's also the cohort size. So at Queens College specifically, you're with only like 16 students. So you really get that one-on-one mentorship from supervisors, from your professors, and all the professors know you, you know them. It's a very like tight-knit group. And we're all like really close friends now. Like we also bonded at orientation, and then we've just been continuing to bond as a cohort. So for me, that was also important because I'm a person that really needs that like one-on-one, as opposed to being in a cohort that might be just like really big, like I don't know, like 70 students. Like for me, 16 was a great number. And Queens College also just offers like a variety of clients that you're going to be working with. And what's great is QC actually lets you start working with clients your very first semester of graduate school. So you're basically thrown right in there not without any guidance, but you're just like, whoa, okay. But I've been working with people who stutter. There's Parkinson's patients. There's also autistic individuals there, people with motor speech disorders, people with aphasia, etc. We also have other clients like people with dementia, primary progressive aphasia. So we have a lot of clients. So, that for me was like, oh, like, that's a huge factor because I want to be able to work with a diverse range of clientele throughout my graduate school program. So in terms of transition, from undergrad to grad, I would say it was challenging for me in the beginning because honestly, like it is not the same as undergrad. You are you kind of have like a lot of classes. You also have a lot of clients. And you also have to like manage, okay, like if I need to work, right, how do I make some income as a graduate student? That's also a thing, right? So in the beginning I was all over the place, like every other freshman. The second they walk into college, they're like, oh my god, this is too much. That was me in the very beginning. I don't think everybody's going to get overwhelmed, but it can get overwhelming, especially because I also didn't take a gap year. I kind of went straight in. But some people took a gap, some people didn't, it depends on you. But I think for me, I was like, I want to like continue learning. And I don't know if I would like want to take a gap year and then come back, so for me, it was challenging just in terms of management and organization. But now I have like a pretty down pat schedule for myself. Okay, so this probably looks very overwhelming. So we at QC, our first semester, we have 5 classes. So you have Arctic and Phonology, you have language acquisition, adult language disorders, part 1, and research methodology, and also a seminar. So those are things to keep in mind. You do have a lot of classes in the beginning at QC. You also have to take into account that you have to meet with your supervisors for the clients that you're working with. So those at least take like 30 minutes. If you have a supervisor multiple times, they might just do their supervision all at one go. So for one of them, like I have like an hour of supervision with that specific supervisor because I have like 3 different clients with that one supervisor. So that's something to keep in note as well. And currently I have 6 clients that I'm working with. It seems daunting. I promise you, it's not as bad as the schedule looks. Like in the beginning, it will be like, wow, that's a lot of clients and I'm not sure what I'm doing, but your supervisors are 100% there with you. They will guide you. Okay, you're not going to just be thrown to the wolves and you have to do things by yourself. Like it's very much like a lot of them like model what they do in the clinic, and then you kind of basically follow, and you kind of can put your own spin on it, right? Bring your personality in for the client, because that's how the client and you basically build rapport and bond. And you're not alone in graduate school. You have your friends, you have your cohort. And honestly, I love the client aspect. Working with clients is one of my favorite things. I am in the cohort and I tell everybody, I'm like, oh, I want more clients. And everybody tells me I'm crazy, even though I already have 6 clients, that I want more clients. But you just fall in love with what you do at the end of the day. And I knew that at that point, since I wanted that many more clients, that I clearly like what I'm doing, right? And I hope that when you guys, wherever school you get into, you will fall in love with working with clients, because that's at the end of the day, that's our profession, is helping clients, their families. And yeah, but that's basically my schedule. This doesn't account for the work I do outside, because I also work as a college assistant right now. So but their hours are so flexible that they work really well with the schedule I have here. So if you're really looking for a job during graduate school, I highly recommend finding a job on campus, or like a college assistant job. Those are really good too. So, but yeah, that's basically it. I know I talked for a lot, so.
That was really informative. Thank you.
Of course.
And does anybody have any questions like right off the bat for now? I have one. Oh, someone has a question about their CV, your CV and resume.
Sure. Is it mine or Sophia's, or just?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, just in general for resume? Oh, that's a great question. I highly recommend going to a career center. QC has a career center. They will happily go over your resume, tailor it towards your graduate program, I would recommend you telling them that you're specifically applying to speech pathology graduate program so they can kind of tailor that. I guess the other things is depending on how many activities that you have done in your 4 years of college, choose the ones that you think would best fit in terms of like speech pathology or tailor that activity specifically related to how you can like use that to impact how you do in grad school and beyond.
I agree. I think the career center, I think I used them once, and then the rest I kind of tweaked it, but you just want to make sure it's geared towards kind of what they want to see. Like you are kind of working in a way to make sure they're seeing what they want, but also just make sure you highlight, you know, your assets and what you bring to the table. I think for me, I kind of went a little bit more traditional resume. I didn't do anything like crazy changing. I don't know about you, Erin, yeah.
I would say I think just you would have to go to the career center for like organization, but I think you can follow the traditional format. Just have whatever your activities are, just try to relate it towards grad school if possible. But if not, I think a traditional also works too. But I kind of try to tailor mine towards like, oh, what I did and how that can help with grad school. But
Erin, for your resume, since you had like a good amount of like experience, did you get to fit it all in it, or did you leave
no.
some?
I did not get to because I was involved in so many things. So I honestly just had to pick and choose what I thought best made sense for graduate school. Let me see if I can pull up a resume.
I agree. It can be really hard to concise everything, especially when you feel like every opportunity, like there's something good that comes out of it that would make you look like a stronger candidate.
Yeah.
On my end, I took some things out that I just didn't really think applied. Like it's a resume, but you're also like, think of it like you're making a resume to be a grad student, like not like that's your job. Your job is a grad student. So whatever kind of like fits that would be. I can definitely share.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can share my spreadsheet. I can like give an example really quick. Like my resume was, it sounds like a lot, but it's basically like I didn't put this in because I didn't do this at the time. But I had like the research I did, worked as a tutor, I did remote tutor as well, and things that I felt made me kind of like a leader because I guess my main thing was for me was like, oh, I've been so involved with leadership that I think that's a great quality I bring to the table. So that's something I put in my resume as well, for leadership roles and activities. But again, in terms of like those activities that I did, I really chose the ones that I felt would best fit like grad school. Again, if you don't have that, that is totally okay. Try to just like talk about the qualities of the work that you did, how that impacted you as a person, right? And your career center person will really help you with that. So I wouldn't stress. But yeah. If you guys need me to send a sample resume as well, I'm happy to do that if that helps you guys.
I also wanted to ask Sophia for her transition, like from undergraduate to graduate.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. I definitely agree with Erin that it was challenging. Some weeks are really good for me. Like I feel so on top. I'm like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna be so good at it. And then the next week it's the complete opposite. So I'm just really trying to work on grounding myself. When I was thinking about like what to share in this meeting, like I was like, this is kind of hard because I'm not even fully done with my first semester. Who knows what the next one's gonna look like? But I'm trying to figure out a way to say this. Like, it's going to be very difficult. And there's going to be times where you question yourself. For me, my imposter syndrome is like very consistently present in my life. But it's trying to rewind that and saying like, okay, it's hard, but like, we're going to figure it out. We're going to do things. Something that I've been struggling with, like compared to undergrad, I felt like in undergrad, I was very, like, I wasn't scared to talk to professor. I wasn't nervous to ask questions. Like presenting was my thing. And I feel like I kind of took steps back because of that stress, because I didn't put it in check when it was coming. So you're gonna experience things that you're really not gonna know how to navigate, but that's the whole purpose of this. You're not supposed to know how to like complete your master's because you've never done it. And if you have, like, even then it's different. You're doing a whole different curriculum, a whole different style of teaching. And it's been hard, but it's been exciting. And I'm just trying to figure out that balance. And I think balance is something that we can all just put more time towards.
Yeah, knowing what to expect from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I did just want to make a comment.
Okay.
I remember when I was getting my acceptance letters, I didn't share this, but I pretty much got into everywhere I applied except Pacewell. Like, I will forever be unknown about that. Don't know what that is. But I was in a position where initially, like, for example, going to Queens, like, wasn't an option. And then after I committed to TC, then I had the option to go. And it was a really difficult time because, like Erin touched on it, like the finances were a really big part of it. The cohort size was a big part to decide. And for me, I really just chose to follow my gut. And for some reason, my gut was saying, like, let's try teachers college. Like, there was just something about it that for me, I just felt like I would regret it ultimately. But with that said, rejection can be super difficult. A school should be lucky to have you. Like, yes, you're doing this whole application, but at the end of the day, like, this is your education you're paying for, and we're at a much higher level now. So just don't ever feel like you're not in the right place or you're feeling less than where you should be at any point in applications. And also, like, when you're in your master's, they're lucky to have you. And of course, yes, vice versa, but like, they are lucky to have you. So don't let a decision define you, and also just really prioritize making sure like you're comfortable, and you feel like you're good with where you are.
Yeah. To add also in terms of like what Sophia was saying with imposter syndrome, honestly, I also had similar issues going in. And I think sometimes what I tend to do is compare myself to other people, right? In terms of, oh, like, they do this great, but how come I can't do it like that? Or like, to me, like sometimes like I feel like I tend to compete or like put myself in a thing where like, oh, I have to compete with others to get this or to succeed. It's not like that in graduate school. I had to totally rewire, and I'm still working on it too. And I think it's because the undergrad program, like, we've been kind of like, oh, we got to do really well. We got to get a certain GPA. We have to look competitive for the applications. And I think that mindset also feeds in when you start graduate school. At least for me, it did, because I am a person that wants to always be great, but I would always compare myself because I didn't feel like, oh, like, am I doing a good job or am I not, And it's a huge thing. It's normal sometimes when you feel like you have to compete, but I honestly, like, with your cohort, like, they're here for you. Your supervisors are here for you. The staff are there for you at the end of the day. It's what you make of those experiences, right? And you don't have to compare yourself because you're your own individual person. You have your own strengths. You have your own things that you can bring to the table that other people might not be able to bring to the table. And I don't know, like your staff, your supervisor really kind of help you build that confidence, because for me, that's also like a thing. Like, I didn't feel as confident going in. But over time it's been getting better, so.
Yeah, if I can also add, like, this topic is just like very big to me because
Yeah.
I know like it's like mental health, and I know sometimes like that can be just an overwhelming conversation. But like for example, I have a professor that in the beginning of the semester, all my professors were really good at being like, "You're gonna be okay. We're all here for you." But I have one professor that like constantly tells us like, "You're gonna try this. Are you gonna be bad at it? Probably, but it's okay because so was I." And hearing that coming from like a clinician, like it sounds really bad, but honestly, it's super grounding for me because I'm like, okay, I'm good because I was kind of bugging out and you feel the same way and you've been in the field for like 20 years at this point. So you're gonna feel lost and you're gonna feel really confused, but it's okay. That's the whole point of the whole process. It's to learn.
To learn 100%.
Mhm.
Even
And then sorry, go ahead. Go ahead,
I was
Carol.
hearing both of you talk about your experiences with applying. It's very comforting because like it's very daunting and seeing just everybody like go through the same thing and then just like applying and like going through the
Yeah.
application a lot.
Yeah, I remember like in undergrad, like I had a good group of friends that like thank the Lord I was able to get through like the experience with. But I remember also like feeling, this is a whole group was going through it, but it felt like very much a process like you were going through by yourself, which is really weird because there was like 50 of us or more probably. So don't be shy to be like, hey, like let's do a little grad school study date and like fill in the Excel sheet together, work on some things, assign yourself like a month to be like, okay, this month I'm working on my statement, and then move on, put that to the side, on to the next. But yeah, ask questions, talk to professors, don't be shy, even though easier said than done. Like, don't go through it by yourself any more than you need to, because it can feel very lonely. And especially when you're doing a process where you're doing all this paperwork and then you're submitting it and then you're like MIA for like 2 months and you're like, okay, well now what? Just make sure you have support and you feel good and you're surrounding yourself with things that make you happy, because it can be stressful.
I see a question. Did you minor or get a degree in the language I'm bilingual in? So I'm not totally fluent, but I usually speak at home. It's Cantonese, some Mandarin. I did not get a minor or degree in it. I think it's highly valuable if you do and have the time to do it. Um, that being said, if you're interested in bilingual speech pathology, usually programs have certain certifications. So I know Teachers College for sure has a bilingual extension. Um, Another thing to note, Queens College does not have a bilingual extension. So outside of 2 years, I would have to get my bilingual extension outside of Queens College. So if you want a program that directly links you to bilingual during your 2 years, then Queens College doesn't necessarily have that, but I know they're working on it. But again, it's another thing to take into consideration when applying. If you feel that you really want bilingual SLP, I know Teachers does have a great bilingual extension,
Yeah.
for sure. Queens, like you have a lot of, the thing I can say about Queens is like you have a lot of diverse clients. So you have like clients that come in that speak totally different languages, so you can get that exposure as well. But we don't have a certification as of right now, but things to keep in mind too.
Yeah, it depends. Like from what I've heard, like just piggybacking off you, like you don't need a degree or anything specific.
Yeah.
It's less like you take the test and you pass or you don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes like what I wish is like I could find someone that can give me like a very honest opinion on the bilingual extension, because I've heard just from experience as from clinicians that depending on your language, it kind of can like increase the worthiness of it or not, or like where you're working. But at the end of the day, like I've also never heard concrete feedback on that, so I don't know what to believe. So I would just say ask questions and see like what the extension can get you. I know at TC, I think it's just one extra class and you take the exam. But that's the good thing about that, because I've also thought about doing it, is like you don't need to know that when you're starting your grad school. You can do your master's, do 20 years, and then come back. You can do it while you're doing it. So yeah, I would just say like try to find people that have a bilingual, maybe specifically with like the language you're working, and see the pros and cons of it. And then you can always just do it. No problem.
Speaking of the Queen's College program. I wanted to ask both of you since you interviewed it kind of, I guess, for tips and advice because they give kind of like a general overview of it. And then talking to people who actually went through it is pretty different.
Do you want to go, Erin?
Sure. It's very general interview questions. They want to just, I think the best way to put it is they want to know you as a person more than what you've put on your resume and your cover letter, or I mean your essay, right? Because they've read it. They decided I want to give you an interview. I know that they will ask questions that are related to things that you enjoy to do. I can't tell the specific questions because I don't think that would be fair, right? So, but try to know what your message is, right? In terms of what you want to do as a speech pathologist. Know what your strengths are. I mean, it's kind of basically like every other interview, except it's not like a job interview. It's more like who you are as a person and how can you bring your strengths to the table and in that graduate program. But it's not like, it's also, I think it's like a group interview. I can say that you're with other students while you're doing the interview. And it's more general questions. Like it's not very like specific. Like they won't ask you about like what you learned in anatomy and physiology. They're not gonna ask you that. So don't stress about the cranial nerves and whatever, like that's not gonna be on they really just want to know you as a person. So
interviews are hard. Like
yeah,
I feel like the only real interview prep you can do is like if you feel like public speaking is not your thing, if there's like a certain way, like when you present something that maybe you want to work on, but like content wise, it really is about you. So as long as you know like why you're there and like what your purpose is in this, you should be fine. I honestly do not remember what they asked me. I was just
I do. I mean, I hand this out to everybody. I might not be able to get back to everybody, but if you need interview prep, you're really worried about it, I'm glad to help you out on it. But yeah, like I feel like I remember certain questions just because I was like, oh, whoa, I didn't think about that. Or sometimes like they ask you questions and you're like, okay, I have to think about it before I answer,
Sometimes, they'll do that too. Like I remember I think it was QC, like they asked me a really good question. I was like, oh wow, like that was really great. I just don't know what to say. They also sometimes I feel like schools know that with the type of questions asking, they're gonna get a certain reaction out of you, such as like, wow, what to say. They also kind of just want to see like how you bounce back from that.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So just honestly, like this is gonna sound like so basic, but like practice being chill, be a professional, but just like be comfortable with like who you are and what you're doing there. And again, like the school should want you and your answers should be enough for them. And if they're not, then maybe you're just like suited for somewhere else,
Be personable though, 100%. Recommend being personable, smile in your interview if you can. I know it's daunting. Trust me, I know. But
I felt like my interviews, at least, like they are 100% a formal thing, but I felt like kind of informal because everyone is just like QC was like me and one other person. It was supposed to be like 4, but it was just us 2. So it was a little bit more intimate. Same with Lehman. I remember I had like a whole conversation with them at some point about like the city I live in restaurants. And I was like, okay, great. Like, what are we doing?
Lehman's questions were very hard, by the way. I will tell you that right off the bat. They had the toughest questions out of all my interviews. So.
I truthfully cannot remember.
I don't remember those questions. I don't remember, but they were hard.
Yeah, but I remember after leaving, realizing like, okay, my stress was a lot higher than it probably needed to be.
Yeah.
Because again, this whole thing is about you. So speak to you and your character, be yourself, and where it's meant to be, it'll be.
And also another thing I can add with the interview, try to incorporate this school's mission, right? You want to make sure that when you're answering the interview questions, you bring yourself to the table, but how does that circle back to what they're looking for, right? Because
Yeah.
You can say all these things, but if it's not relating back to it, it's very hard for you. And then
Yeah, like the schools know like what their purpose is. And if you can tie in like how you fit into that, like it just makes it easier for them to visualize it. I wouldn't say like verbatimly be like, oh, I know your mission statement is this, therefore. Like, you got to make it a little bit unique, but yeah, I think that was a good point. I want to say this before I forget because I had this happen to me. I remember it was St. John's. I'm pretty sure like I had received an acceptance, but there was a point that like I had no contact from them. Like I had no idea what was going on. And I emailed you saying like, hey, I need to know what's going on. And there was a part of my application that just didn't process or something. And I needed to pay like an extra something to get like the transcript sent through. And I was like, absolutely not. Because for me, like that was red flag one where I was like, to me, I would appreciate a little bit more organization and like communication that like something was missed and it was going like months at that point that I just wasn't hearing back. Which like sounds like a stressful thing to some people, but for me, like I was just like, okay, cool. Like maybe this is just not like the vibe I need. But checking with your applications. I know Erin said this, don't submit the day of. At least like a week before. I would say if you can like further back so that way like if there is anything wrong, like there's space to be like, okay, I can fix this part. Because it happens like tech wise things happen, also like miscommunications. So I would say the earlier the better and just check in if it's been a while. I know for St. John's it took me like weeks to be like, all right, I'm gonna email them because I didn't want to be pushy. But if you feel like it's unreasonable, to like see what's going on with all your other peers. And yeah, sometimes that happens. But I just want to let you know that sometimes that happens.
Does anybody have any other questions? I don't think so. I don't think anybody has any questions.
It's okay.
But yeah, it's still, we still have some time, but I think we've got all the information and we were able to talk through a lot of important subjects like the mental health and just being able to know what to expect and everything. And yeah, that was really nice.
Of course. Yeah, I'm open to questions. I can share my email. I like to be as honest as possible. So if you need like a very brutally honest answer, you can always ask me. I'm more than happy to help.
Yes.
And yeah. And
I
then
can my email as well too.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah. This is my email. I'll put in the chat. Interview prep for QC. I'm glad I can help with that. But that would have to be outside of here. But I promise if I have time, I will try to help with that. But you guys got this, okay? I know it's daunting, but I know that you will get through the application process. You will get where you need to be. You will find your place. It's going to be okay. I know it's stressful. I was in that position before. Sophia was in that position before. You got this. But you got to believe in yourself, okay?
Yeah, it's going to be fine. Everyone, you're going to have fun. It's supposed to be a good experience. Yeah, and just take care of yourself. And that goes for like every day, not just for your master's, but
yeah.
take care of yourselves.
Mental health, it's
going
to be important in grad school. So.
Thank you so much to the both of you. Your presentations were so beautiful. I learned.
Of course.
I don't know, Carol, if you want us to send our presentations over to you, and if it would be helpful for the undergraduate students. So
yeah, being able to give you all the information again. So I'll reach out to both of you afterwards. And yes, thank you so much. And yeah, this was a really great meeting.
Of course. Great seeing you guys. Good luck with everything, everyone.